Happy Women's Day. What does this mean for you and me and women and society? Why are we doing this? And what should we consider as we do it? People have been congratulating me today, and it's nice. I like being a woman. I like being celebrated. And I think by virtue of being a woman, there's things that I've accomplished that men simply cannot do. Like all that's biologically and psychologically required to give birth. And I did that twice, once naturally, and being incredibly intuitive and clear seeing when I'm on my period about what I need to change in my own life and what needs to change in the world, right? Men simply don't have biological access to that. And being a woman has allowed me some personality traits that women tend to have compared to men. And that's allowed me to endure and thrive in some ways and be part of a partnership to raise a family successfully. And too much of those personality traits, for example, neuroticism, women tend to be more neurotic trait than men. That can be a weakness that many women can have compared to men. So this Women's Day, here's some of my thoughts about women in our society as we advance in rank and ability worldwide. So Women's Day is celebrated on March 8th every year. It honors the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women worldwide, and it serves as a call for advancing gender equity. Great. The first thing I'm thinking about is, how are women advancing? Like, what kind of women are advancing in our current systems? What are their personality traits and socioeconomic realities compared to other women who are not advancing in our current systems? I mean, so many of us that are trying to advance in the same systems that we've been historically and still in many parts of the world excluded from are quite egoic and what I call sociopathic. And they exclude virtues like patience and emotional intelligence and cooperation and devotion and compassion and intuition and beauty and grace and gentleness and love and kindness. And this is obvious when you look at women's outfits as they enter the professional world, right? It's often a suit or a button-down shirt. It's very masculine, looking like men. And there's fortunately softer variations of this. And I think that's emerging, thank goodness. I've even been a little bit guilty of adopting more masculine traits when I enter the professional world myself. When I testified before Congress, and you can watch my testimony pinned at the top of my Twitter account, link in bio, I wore this white dress that was quite soft, pretty, fitted, no button down, and I had my hair down, very feminine. But over it, I had a structured jacket. And in my defense, it didn't have sleeves or lapel, and it was white. But isn't it interesting that women adopt the masculine styles of men, either in their dress or how they interact once they're trying to advance in those systems? There's this one lady, though, that I saw that defied this beautifully, and I loved it. It was Dr. Casey Means, and she was at a U.S. Senate roundtable in D.C., and she was wearing something that was decidedly very feminine. She was wearing an off-the-shoulder, which I've never seen anybody in D.C. do, off-the-shoulder blue number, and it had a little bit of flow to it, and she had her hair down. Very feminine, very different than what we typically see in Washington, D.C. And I loved seeing that. It was a true manifestation of the feminine in the swamp. And women adopting this masculinity is not unusual throughout history. Did you know, for example, men, not women, were the first to wear high heels. And then women adopted wearing high heels, and because of that, men stopped wearing high heels. There's also men's names, right, which women started being named as well. So do you guys remember Ashley from Gone with the Wind, who Scarlett O'Hara was like obsessed with? That was a man named Ashley. And there's masculine names that are now considered feminine, like Blair, Leslie, Evelyn, Stacy, Kim, Courtney, not Chloe. That's always been a woman's name. Sydney. You get the point. The idea is that parents started using these names for their girls, and other parents stopped using these names for their boys as more and more girls started being named them. So why am I talking about clothes and names, right? trying to underscore the idea that there's this element of people who are coming into positions of power and they want to fit in as being worthy of a higher rank in those systems of power, who want to be accepted. And they adopt the dress and the mannerisms and the names of the strata into which they're entering. But at the same time, I think women and organizations supporting women and their equity have to be careful that as they gain power, they're not losing the parts of their womanhood that are essential for changing the system for the better. And what do I mean by for the better? I mean that there's so much of what Eastern traditions call the yang elements, the feminine elements. So we live balanced lives, right? We live or want to live lives and have societies where the masculine and feminine, the yin and the yang, are in balance with each other and one's not completely overpowering the other. What's the point of being a woman who acts like a man in systems dominated by men? So I think this is an important thing to keep in mind. As women become more powerful socially, economically, politically, are they doing more of the same, or are they creating new systems and ways of being either parallel to our current systems or within our current paradigms? A lot of women that I've seen in positions of power, very prominent, women like Hillary Clinton, Martha Stewart, Kamala Harris, they're decidedly very masculine, and that's not necessarily healthy for them or for us. And it certainly perpetuates the same old, same old. They were the trailblazers, so maybe they had to be that way to survive, but I don't think so. And I think part of the reason that some people look and feel disconnected from them is because the essence of womanhood in a way has been lost from them, either in childhood because they were told to be a certain way, or maybe as they progressed throughout the ranks, or maybe they had to do it in order to survive in the system and climb. Another thing that I'm thinking about is as women gain more power, they're actually going to be taken away from the sacred sphere of the home. We've seen it in the past 50 years that as women have been entering the workforce away from the home, which was promoted by men in power. They wanted women to enter the workforce. They wanted more women to pay tax. They wanted women in a way to be disconnected from their children. They will actually end up having less time and energy for their children in their homes. The children suffer more, and I think the women are suffering as well. So first, let's talk about the women. So our current systems have many women working away from the home in a 9-to-5 job. This goes against the biology of most women. They have a menstrual cycle. And as a society, we're not honoring that menstrual cycle. And it's to the detriment of women's health and our health as a society. Women's menstrual cycles create dramatic changes in cognition, immunity, energy, mood, and many other factors throughout the cycle. But yet we expect women to operate in our current systems as men do. And it's sad for me to see women, plenty of them, are self-medicating or they're taking prescriptions, over-the-counter meds, stimulants, pain meds in order to get through their days instead of listening to their bodies, being in tune to their bodies, realizing that pain signals or fatigue signals are signals for them to actually stop and meet their own needs. But instead of resting when they need to rest, when their estrogen is low, and instead of listening to their own bodies, they're quite disembodied from their own bodies. And this is causing disease. So our entire systems are sociopathic because they're not honoring the woman's cycle, her natural biology, and they're in denial of women's biology and their natural cycles. It's set up in a way that actually works against women's health. And women think in order to make it, they have to operate in these systems, in these masculine systems, including economic structures. So one of the questions that I'm asking this Women's Day is how can we create new systems of being healthy for women where our mothers, our daughters, our wives, our sisters are living in tune with their biology and being able to thrive doing that. Secondly, when it comes to children, I don't think it's good for both parents to be out of the home. I think that data is showing more and more that it's good for at least one parent, ideally the mother, especially in the early years, to be there with the child. Having been somebody who worked away from the home many long hours for many years, I now realize it is not good for our children to have their mother away from the home, especially in those early years of life. And depending on each child's unique personality, what I call their neuropsychological profile, their neuropsychological needs, it's very important to have someone who's attuned to the needs of that child in an exquisite way that most men's minds are not capable of. I'll give you an example of something very basic that has long-term consequences and sequelae. So food, eating, hunger, overeating, mindful eating. A mother who's at home and has been feeding her child food knows when the child last ate, how much they ate, what they ate, how long that child will need, because they're very attuned to the patterns of that child. Maybe morning differs than afternoon, differs than evening. And they'll know, and they'll develop a good feeling of when that child's going to eat again, how much, and what they need to make up for it, or they might need to make changes to what they need to present to that child for their evening meal, how much to give, what specific ingredients to give to kind of supplement what the previous meals were, and how to do it in a way that's the appropriate amount. So the child develops a mindful eating attitude and behavior and doesn't get stuffed or feel this gnawing feeling of not having eaten enough, versus a mother who's put their child in daycare and they're disconnected from their child's eating and then feeds the child again, sometimes by force. So the child never learns about mindful eating or being mindful of their own appetite. And then what we have is problems of overeating, emotional overeating, undereating. Other examples are mothers who are too tired to engage with their children in a meaningful way, or being in tune with what's going on in the child's world. And aside from energy, maybe that the mother simply doesn't have enough time to be noticing the child and their behavior and how the child is growing over time, and notice those subtle changes in the child's behavior that might indicate that something is off physically, mentally, emotionally. So are we advocating for the advancement of women in a way that's good for their health and the health of their children and the health of their families and ultimately the health of society and our future? I don't think we're doing a very good job of it at all. Another thing that I've been thinking about a lot is the fact that our current sociopathic systems in which we're living are supported implicitly and explicitly by women. For example, let's look at Iran, where a dictatorial regime has been in power for more than 40 years. In Iran, the vast majority of the people in power are men. Women are not allowed to run for president. They are allowed to run for parliament, but still the numbers are nowhere near for men. So given that most of the people in power are men, the question then is, who are the people that are making the lives of these men so smooth at home that enables them to continue in their positions of power? Who are the people who are supporting these men to be successful, giving the dinner parties, making sure they come home to a well-cooked, warm dinner, taking care of the children, making sure the kids' education is taken care of, taking care of the house, cleaning the house, or coordinating management of the household servants? It's the women. It's the mothers, the wives, the sisters that support and uphold and affirm and uplift these men so they can go and persecute and jail and torture their fellow Iranians who are protesting for freedom. The very dynamics of systems in which we live and that we'd like to change are supported by women, and they're more than happy to have that power. In order for us to wisely grow as a society and advance women and their place globally in a wise way, we have to understand the shadow sides of being a woman in today's world and the shadows of women and womanhood. I'm hopeful that we can be up to the challenge. So let's do it. Here's to us all. Happy Women's Day. I love you. Bye.